How's it going, everybody? This is my second video that I'm going to be uploading, talking about specific topics of the faith. And the topic that I wanted to kind of address is helping people to understand a very important distinction on the topic of heresy. When you ask the question, what is heresy, most commonly it gets referred to as a teaching. And I want to read to you real quick from Galatians 5, verse 19 and 20. It says, "Now the works of the flesh are evident, which are adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lewdness, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambition, dissension, heresies." I'm going to stop right there, even though that verse ends in the midst of what Paul was writing. It actually cuts a sentence there where he continues to list off more things. But the reason why I'm stopping there is because he addressed heresies. And an important thing for us to realize is he is pointing out that heresies is actually a work of the flesh. And we commonly hear people, when they talk about heresies, they talk about the teaching. They express that defining heresy is about teaching, but yet we see a bit of different light from the Apostle Paul in addressing the topic of heresies, which he labels as a work of the flesh. Now, I understand that it could be seen as the work of the flesh is the act of a person teaching something that is false, but the reason why I think this is a really important distinction to make is because the practice of heresies happens a lot more regularly than often gets accounted for. Most commonly, people will cling to like some vast or huge teachings and label that as heresy, and they will label a person who is teaching such things as heretical, such as like maybe a person who's denying the Trinity or denying the deity of Christ. They will say that teaching, that doctrine is heresy. But I think that there's a bit more that goes into it when we start looking at the way that Paul addressed the topic, saying that it's a work of the flesh. And the reason why this is really important, because we actually live in a day and age where our culture has begun to express argumentation that comes from positions rather than being honest with the text. And of course that obviously leads to a lot of division. A lot of division and separations happen because people are trying to create argumentation that comes from their position rather than just being honest with what the text is telling them. So with that being said, I just would encourage my brothers, get into the text, look at it for yourself. You see Galatians 5 verse 19 and 20, he talks about the works of the flesh, and one of them is labeled off as heresies. So with that being said, I would paint the picture for you this way, that a heresy would be someone who is stubbornly wanting to stand in their position rather than being honest with what the text is presenting to them. And that can come across the board in a lot of different ways. And I know a lot of people will say, well, what are you saying? There's all these people that are heretical and they're preaching heresies. And that's exactly what I'm getting at, is that heresies do not get a proper accounting for, because we tend to paint the picture that a heresy is just a teaching and not really a work of the flesh, meaning that people who are in the flesh, they're doing all sorts of things that would be labeled as heresy, which is them holding too tightly to their positions rather than coming to a place of repentance and being honest with what God is declaring in His Word. So with that being said, I'll leave that with you guys. Please subscribe, and feel free to reach out to me if you guys have any questions or insights that you would like to share. Really appreciate them. You guys have a good day. God bless.